All right, it's time to talk about UFN 118 or Ultimate Fight Night. Cerrone versus Till. A bit of a weak ass main event, if you're asking me. But you know what? Despite the lack of name recognition on this card and the fact that the two top votes are, a named fighter against someone who's really supposed to be a stepping stone when it comes down to it. There's a lot of interesting prospects on this card. Oscar Piechota is really intriguing. I'm very excited to see what Ramazan Emeev can do. I'm very excited for Felipe Arantes versus Josh Emmett. Not that those are prospects, but they are, considerably exciting action fighters. Aspen Ladd's on the card. So there's a lot of interesting stuff, for sure. But a little lacking the name and value, but I'm going to enjoy the card. Hope you do too. It is a free one, so enjoy. So let's start at the bottom and work our way up. We have Felipe Arantes versus Josh Emmett. This fight was supposed to occur a little while ago, but there was an illness on Arantes' part that, like it or not, is probably associated to weight cutting. I know people will be, they didn't say it was a weight cutting problem, but when you are weight cutting, you're more susceptible to, your immune system letting you down anyway. So even if it's an illness that's not directly related to the weight cut, it probably is related to the weight cut. So, with that in mind, I'm having a hard time thinking about picking Arantes in this fight. He does give up takedowns somewhat easily. Josh Emmett is an alpha male wrestler, good top game, good forward progress. Not the fastest featherweight in the world. Kind of showed up in one of his more recent fights against Scott Holtzman to a degree that he wasn't that quick. Des Green as well showed him up a little bit in that regard. But I'm going to go with Emmett here by decision. I think the flaws in Arantes' game, which, and I'm a big Arantes fan. I find him incredibly exciting to watch. But there are some definite flaws in his game from both a technical level, a physical level, and a mental level that I think Emmett can exploit and pick up the decision here. It's a reasonably safe bet. And then you add the fact that there was the, botched preparation for the prior fight that could come into play here. Aspen Ladd versus Lena Landsberg, the elbow princess. I'm going with Aspen Ladd here. She has good forward pressure boxing. She is very accurate, reasonably defensively sound, and Landsberg is just kind of physically unimpressive. And generally speaking, has a bit of a hard time handling that kind of pressure game that should break her down here and pick up a TKO for Ladd. I'll be interested to see what Ladd looks like at 135 because I've always thought of her as more of a 125er, and Landsberg is a 135er, so that and a relatively large one. So there is that, but Landsberg's doesn't really have a style or a physical talent that allows her to utilize any size advantage she would probably have. Warley Alves versus Salim Tuari. I don't know enough about Salim the Grizzly. From what I've seen, he does have some cardio problems. I foresee Alves picking up a submission here. I think people forget how good Alves is because we've seen him lose to Brian Barberena and Kamaru Usman, and I think people don't really recognize how good both those fighters are. I think Barberena gets looked at as a afterthought in the division, really, and then Usman, people are going to be in a root for. So that's a real deal fighter. And, Alves should be able to pick this up and get it done. Andre Fili versus Artem Lobov. This is the one that has me thinking. It's not because of a lot of particularly nice things I have to say about either fighter. I look at them and I see a lot of basically holes in the game. Andre Fili is an alpha male striker, which is still something they haven't proven that they can really do. They do a decent job with wrestle boxers who are going to utilize a lot of takedowns, and that makes up for some of their problems in the striking department. And of course, the Dwayne Ludwig days really kind of hyped it up a little bit, but Ludwig left, and I think the guys who really benefited from his tutelage also left. So you're left with you're left with Andre Fili. He's not a bad range striker, but the loss to Calvin Cater, I think, really exposed some limitations to his game. He's not comfortable leading. He's not comfortable countering. He's really only comfortable in a brawl. Lobov, on the other hand, kind of a slow guy. Not a tremendous amount of athleticism to him. Very, very tough. I'll get the compliments out of the way. Very tough. but kind of one-dimensional, kind of a boxer who just has some decent low kicks to throw in. Defensively kind of suspect. I mean, Cub Swanson did really land a record for significant strikes against him. We generally think of that fight as being a good showing by Lobov, so when your good showing is getting a record number of strikes landed on you, it says a thing about your defense. I'm going to go by Fili by decision, but this is a do not bet fight. These are both guys I don't trust to win fights that they should, and I'm not even entirely certain that either of them really should win this fight. So, I mean, there is that, but I feel like some of the things with Fili are fixable. I don't necessarily think the things with Lobov that are wrong with his game are actually fixable. I think that's what it comes down to. Ramazan Emeev versus Sam Alvey. This is supposed to be Trevor Smith, which I was going to take Emeev in easily. Alvey, Emeev is very hittable. Alvey, good counterpuncher, good power. Could definitely do some things. But also is prone to inactivity, prone to letting you kind of have the fight you want. And Emeev is going to want that in the clinch. May not be able to take down Alvey, but he should be able to neutralize him to a degree. Should be able to, dirty box him a little bit, do his thing. Also, Alvey having a terrible weight cut for this fight, something like 34 pounds he has to drop in like a couple days. It's insane, truthfully. And I don't know if I can bet on a guy who has that kind of weight cut ahead of him. So I'm going with Emeev by decision. This could be pretty ugly, to be honest. Emeev is a prospect with a little bit of hype behind him, but Sam Alvey has a way of limiting what you can do. We'll see. This one I'm really looking forward to, actually. Damian Stasiak versus Brian Kelleher. And when I say looking forward to, it doesn't mean I have a good idea of how it's going to go. Kelleher is very explosive, very dynamic, very physically talented fighter. Actually, very technical as well, actually. A good striker, a good grappler, good takedowns. Really a lot is there, but the defensive actions of his game, partially due to his high-impact style and dynamicism, is limited. He is prone to getting subbed. He's prone to getting hit hard. Hasn't been knocked out, has a good chin, and Stasiak is not tremendously powerful, so I don't really think that that's an option. But Stasiak, very tough guy, karate base, but more of a grappler when it comes down to it, learning to use his boxing better. Actually, was pretty impressive in the Pedro Munoz fight, which I thought was one that he would lose it, wouldn't get finished or anything, but would very much get destroyed in, and he didn't. He really hung in there. I think a few people even scored the fight for him. So, very tough guy, better submission artist than one would really give him credit for. Better striker in regards to as well. I'm going with Kelleher by decision, but the chances of him getting caught, like he's physically better. He is, I think, a better grappler than Stasiak, and very powerful. But those defensive issues I was talking about, I could totally see Stasiak catching him in something and tapping him out. But we'll go with Kelleher. I was thinking decision, maybe TKO as well. I could see him being the first guy to stop Stasiak because he is more of a finisher than anything Stasiak has fought before. Anthony Hamilton versus Adam Wieczorek. I don't know. I have given up on predicting Anthony Hamilton fights. He is 1-3 in his last 4, and I believe I picked him to win 2 of the fights he lost. I believe I picked him to lose the fight he won, so I think I am 1-3 because I did pick Francis Ngannou to beat him. But I don't know. I just really don't. Let's pull this up a little more. Adam Wieczorek is not the kind of guy who gets a lot of knockout finishes, which has been the Hamilton problem. Is that he has a bad chin. I think we can officially say that. Like getting knocked out by or getting submitted by Nagano was no shame. Getting knocked out by Duffy is not so bad. But getting knocked out by Marcel Fortuna and Daniel Spitz. Fortuna, who is a guy who should be fighting at 205 easily, and in Spitz's case, one of the worst fighters on the UFC roster, and not a particularly dynamic knockout artist either. I like Hamilton's game more than I like Wiezorek's. I think Wieczorek is, he's a really tall guy, really physically rather imposing, but he's kind of you look at his wins, and there's no pattern of replicatability. There's no reason to pick him to win fights, I guess is what it comes down to. Other than, well, he has a decent record, and Hamilton finds ways to lose fights. So I'm going to go with Wieczorek by TKO, but I have zero faith in either of these guys. Like, this is the Andre Fili Artem Lobov fight at heavyweight. Like, I see way more weaknesses in both guys than I do in any kind of strength. Then we have Marcin Held versus Nasrat Hasparas. I think that's how you say his name. I may be wrong. Haven't seen a lot of Hasparas. Decent record. Not a lot of big names on it. I'm going to go with Marcin Held. Held's run in the UFC has been bad. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, which the thing is, it shouldn't be the case. Like, he should be 3-0, and that's not me saying like bad judging or anything. It's just bad fight IQ. Like, he should have beaten Diego Sanchez. He was beating Diego Sanchez until he made horrendous mistakes. He did beat Joe Lozon. I think even Joe Lozon said that, and so he should be 1-2. And then he was beating Damir Hadzovic until he went for a pretty lazy takedown and got knocked out. He should be the better grappler here. His stand-up, I think, is actually something that is kind of underrated. It's more of a recent development, but I see him getting this to the fight to the ground at some point and submitting Hasparat. That's my call. But I mean, like I said, I picked Held to actually. Well, to be honest, I only picked him to beat Hadzovic. I thought Lozon and Sanchez would beat him, and he surprised me in both those fights. And then he surprised me in the Hadzovic fight in a bad way. So, moving on, a fight I'm actually excited about: Jonathan Wilson versus Oscar Piechota. Piechota, grappling phenom, young grappling phenom. Actually has developed into a really good boxer. He's found MMA and has realized that I got actually pretty heavy hands and I like to use them. And Jonathan Wilson, pretty athletic guy, very big for the weight class. He's coming down from 205, I do believe, and he was fairly sized there. So, that's also interesting. But there's not really a lot of connective tissue to Wilson's game. Like, if you ask him to throw a good straight punch or a good kick, he's quite capable of doing that, and he will. That being said, his understanding of how everything fits together is very, very limited. He's kind of young in his MMA career, despite the relatively in-depth record of I think he's like something like 7-2, somewhere around 10 fights, and hasn't had a great time in the UFC. Beat Chris Dempsey, who is not a very good fighter. Lost to Ian Kulaba, lost to Enrique de Silva. I'm going to go with Piechota by TKO knockout, first or second round here. He's going to be better on the ground than Wilson, and I think his stand-up game is better put together, even if Wilson's is like his individual strikes are maybe a tad better, but the ability to put it all together is more present in Pichota's game. So we'll go with that. Jan Blachowicz versus Devin Clark. I've gone back and forth in this one. Right now I'm thinking Devin Clark wins the decision. I think that Blachowicz is still somewhat easy to take down. Slow, not particularly physically athletic, not particularly powerful. He has the ability to make people look not very good. Patrick Cummings, Alexander Gustafsson, to a degree Corey Anderson, but his wins in the UFC, the guys he's actually been able to beat are kind of limited. And I was kind of excited for when Blachowicz signed from KSW, and he had a great debut against Ilar Latifi, but after that, losing to Jimmy Manuwa, Corey Anderson, beating Igor Prokrajic, losing to Alexander Gustafsson and Pat Cummins, there's just not a lot to really think that he can win. And, Devin Clark's been better in that regard. The loss in his debut to Alex Nicholson notwithstanding, he's looked good going back up to light heavyweight, beating Josh Stansbury and Jake Collier. Blachowicz would represent probably the best win of his career. But at this point in his career, I think like there's upside to Clark, and Blachowicz is, if anything, getting worse. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Devin Clark by decision. Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Jodie Esquibel. This is an easy one. Kowalkiewicz, on a downslide after getting to the title shot, obviously losing to Yona Jacek, and then frankly getting destroyed by Claudia Gadelha, who's been destroyed since by Jessica Andrade. A low point in her career, but she should be able to beat Jodie Esquibel, who is not in any way a bad fighter. Actually was a fair amount of hype when she came in, but that hype I don't think has been, or is this her debut? Am I thinking of someone else? This is her debut. Yeah, never mind about that. Some hype, beat Deanna Bennett, beat Nisadali Rivera Kalanick, Jin Yu Frey, but the losses to Alex Chambers, Alexa Grasso, feels like someone who should be fighting at atom weight, not straw weight, to be honest. And I'll take Kowalkiewicz by decision because she's not really a finisher in any way. She doesn't have a natural power or a particularly deep submission game or really even a desire to use it. She kind of fights like a decision fighter and should be able to pick this up. This is just nothing about Esquibel that should threaten her. That's just all there is to it. Donald Cerrone, Darren Till, main event of the evening. The guys who beat Cerrone historically are guys who are going to pressure, utilize good boxing, utilize takedowns, utilize body shots. Although, realistically, Till only does one of those things. He is a body shot guy. He can do that, but he's not high volume. He's not high work rate. He's not really a pressure guy. He is good at keeping distance, but that's kind of the distance that Cerrone wants to fight at anyways. I've got to go with Cerrone, finding Till's chin at some point and putting him down. I think there's a lot of good things to take from Till beating Jessamine Arari and Bojan Vlichkovic, but there's a lot of negatives I took from the Nicholas Dalby fight. And I don't think, if you're asking me, is Nicholas Dalby a better fighter than Donald Cerrone really in any way? The answer is no. And, I need to see Till beat someone with a diverse game, who could do multiple different things, who could put a game plan together, and is tough and reasonably athletic, before I can believe that it will actually happen. To a degree, you get that with every fighter. There's a ceiling that you need to see them pass before you can believe that they will. But I think with Till, it's even more. It stands out more for me because there are guys who come along where I'm like, I have faith that they can beat this bar. And with Till, I don't have faith he can beat like a complete MMA fighter. I think he can beat very flawed fighters, and we'll see. He has his chance, obviously, here to prove me completely wrong if he goes out there and just dusts Donald Cerrone. But I don't see it happening. Donald Cerrone, it'll take a while. Till's pretty good, but I'll say third round TKO Donald Cerrone, maybe a submission as well. But I think the undefeated run comes to an end for Till. But you never know. I mean, we thought early in his career that John Jones was going to get beat by a number of people, and it didn't happen. Mind you, we also have some steroid allegations during that time period, but so, it's a bit of a mess. As per usual, I got the usual links down below, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy the card. I think there's a lot of actually very interesting fights, like the main event. I think, despite the fact that I feel very strongly that Cerrone will win, it's an interesting fight. I think Piechota Wilson is a good fight. I think Stosniak Kelleher is going to be a sleeper. I think that Lobov and Fili, I hate to predict it. I think that's going to be a good fight. I think Arantes versus Josh Emmett's going to be a good fight. So, there's plenty here, and you get to see some guys who might factor in prominently to the future of their respective divisions. And ladies, Jodie Esquibel, I think, well, I'm kind of dismissive about her abilities to beat Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I think she's in for the long haul. I think we'll see a fair bit of her. And, that's about it. So, hope you enjoy your day. And, I've always said it, if you're going to bet smart.